We did it. The Fantasy Points Prospect Guide is here, written by me, which makes this a perfect day to do some film verse analytics. I am your host, Brett Whitefield. Today we're breaking down Brian Thomas Jr. Every day we'll be breaking down a new prospect in the Dynasty ADP. I'm joined by my co-host, Scott Barrett. He is the analytics expert. He's also the CEO of FantasyPoints.com. Let's jump into it. Scott, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, man. I'm excited for this episode. Not too many disagreements between us thus far, but yeah, now we're about to go to war over Brian Thomas Jr.
All right. Well, Scott, I mean, I think we did happen to actually watch some tape on him together. One of the few guys we've gotten to together so far. So this will be interesting because hopefully some of our, I mean, we were watching Jaden Daniels, but inevitably when you watch Daniels, you get to some Brian Thomas. So hopefully maybe I changed your mind a little bit, but let's dive in. Why don't you hit me with what you got here, sir?
Yeah, so Brian Thomas Jr. as a freshman with LSU, he was the team's wide receiver 3 by routes run and the wide receiver 7 by yards per game. And then as a sophomore, he ranked 5th best among LSU's wide receivers in yards per route run. And then he broke out as a junior in his age 20 season. He had an FBS best 17 touchdowns, 1,177 yards, but also nearly 400 yards behind neighbors. And so, yeah, the analytics really don't like 1 year wonders. That's a bit of a red flag, but it's not a huge deal when you're an early declare. Don't want to penalize him. I'm sure if he stayed in school next year, he would have had a very good year, but still his career in totality is pretty brutal. Career yards per route run is more predictive than best season or final season yards per route run. And when looking at college prospects, I typically use 2.00 career yards per route run as a very low threshold a player needs to clear in order to get into that day one or day two conversation. The track record of all day one or day two wide receivers who failed to clear that mark is really abhorrent. Genuinely, we've only ever seen two players fail to clear that mark and then just not become a total bust at the NFL level. One was Terry McLaurin, the other was DK Metcalf, both freak athletes like Brian Thomas. Metcalf, insane target competition in college. AJ Brown, Elijah Moore, Dawson Knox, also was averaging like 3+ yards per route run in his final season, but got hurt or halfway through the season. But anyway, Thomas just barely missed this benchmark, 1.95 career yards per route run. And again, he's also an early declare, but also it's bad. Like the track record, like that's not insignificant. And then I don't know how much that final season was really all that impressive. Last season, he ranked 15th best uh, in the Power Five by yards per route run, only 12th best by touchdown adjusted yards per route run, ranked far worst by first downs per route run. And so, sure, he was competing for targets against another elite wide receiver in Malik Neighbors, who we already discussed. But he also benefited from high end quarterback play from the Heisman winner, Jaden Daniels. He's also 97th percentile in percentage of career targets deemed to be on target by PFF, which makes all of his numbers look so much worse. Bottom 25th percentile in Yak. And then here's one final red flag. There's some concern over him being a one trick pony or a less complete receiver. Last season, a whopping 42.7% of his yards came on just one route, the go route. And so, in totality, I just definitely don't see him being worthy of his current ADP. This is just not a good analytics profile. I know you like him, Brett. So one question I would have for you is maybe he's just better in real life than in fantasy. Like he's a Will Fuller where he brings this added go route, deep threat element that helps your offense, but doesn't necessarily translate to fantasy points. And so, yeah, Brian Thomas, current ADP wide receiver 4 in rookie draft, super flex 109. That's high to me.
Yeah, so anytime you're talking about these numbers, like I'm always a stickler for adjusting for context, right? One of the big points of context is like that LSU offense is vertical. That's what they do. They do have some short routes they work in. That's not what Thomas was asked to do. It's not necessarily even what Neighbors was asked to do at times. They have other good receivers there as well. Lacey's a very good receiver, and that's typically who they got involved in the short part of the field. I just don't you can't penalize a guy for not putting something on tape that he wasn't asked to do, right? It's not like you can definitely call it a red flag, like, hey, I'm not sure he can do these things, but you definitely can't say he can't. So calling him a one-trick pony, I think is a little much. You have to scout the physical traits, Scott, and that's what the film is for. When I watch him, I see a guy who could potentially turn into a legit alpha X prototype wide receiver one guy. The physical profile is absolutely mouthwatering. I mean, you see this big, long, he's got good weight, absolute insane linear explosiveness. I mean, we saw this when we watched the tape, Scott. He was leaving SEC corners in the dust on the regular. And does he project immediately to the NFL as a deep threat kind of guy? Absolutely. I'm not going to shy away from that. I think that is what he is. He's a math changer. I think maybe early in his career, he is a guy that affects the way defenses play at a higher level than the fantasy output necessarily will dictate. So, or show, anyways. I think he shows up more on the football field than he does in the fantasy sheet early on. I don't think that's an issue, though. I think he projects really, really well to the next level. When we talk about his skill set, you got like the deep threat stuff is there because the vertical skill set is completely developed. We're talking about speed to stack. He threatens blind spots really well. He gets a lot of free access to the entire vertical tree because he is so explosive. Like he can get into a defender's blind spot immediately, which basically gives him open lanes to the post route, gives him open lanes to 7 routes if he's playing from a reduced alignment. Body tracking is insane. Body control is insane. By the way, I said body tracking. I meant ball tracking is insane. Um, his ability to lay out, go up and get the ball, or play above the rim is insane. He bailed out Jaden Daniels on a lot of underthrown balls. Daniels obviously hit him in stride a lot as well, but I mean he is a really really good player on that vertical route tree. I think it's not. I don't view it as a negative to say that's what he does really well, and it might be the only thing he did consistently at LSU, but that's because that's what he was consistently asked to do. I do have some concerns though, Scott. So I'm not gonna say this is a perfectly clean prospect. He needs to like remember when we had the conversation about DK Metcalf a couple years ago, and I talked about how there should never be a game he doesn't have 90 receiving yards in it. Remember that?
Yeah.
Big reason for that, Scott, was when you have the vertical receiving ability that these guys have, Thomas, Metcalf, you're going to see off coverage a ton. They are going to give you free yards underneath, and one of the traits you got to see to really capitalize on that is start stop ability, and you don't necessarily see that from Thomas yet. He wasn't very proficient on those, routes working back to the quarterback, whether it was comebacks and hitches. That gives me a little pause because I think to take full advantage of that linear explosiveness, he has to be able to work back to the quarterback and be successful on those routes. I don't necessarily need him to be the best on in-breaking routes and the most technical route runner of all time, but I need him to be able to capitalize on that space the defense is inevitably going to give him. It's baked into the cake. They're going to play off of him. No one in their right frame of mind is going to press him. It's just the way it is. He's got some inconsistent hands technique. Also, that's really it. He kind of has this weird two-handed. Sometimes it's great diamond technique, secures the ball to his frame. Other times he kind of claps at it. It's not quite as bad as Quentin Johnston's hands technique was last year, but it's a little Terry McLaurin-ish where you could see some drops pop up. But did I answer any of your questions, or do you have more?
No, not really. I think I just fundamentally disagree. It's like I said, it brutal freshman season, brutal sophomore season, pretty good, but
But what?
probably a
Why
little.
does the freshman and sophomore season matter if he if he elevated his game to another level his junior year?
Yeah, the track record on 1 year wonders is really bad. Um,
But are you filtering though for 1 year wonders that don't have developed skills? So there are a lot of 1 year wonders that don't have good tape. They just blew up their last year because they were the only option. That's not true for Thomas. His tape elevated extensively from freshman to sophomore to junior.
Yeah, I mean, I you hear that a lot with the film guys, well, there's context and, Xavier Leggett is like a great example. It doesn't matter nearly as much when you're a junior, like I said, to be fair. But no, I mean, we can look back at your film score and see if that's the case. But just analytically, without that, it's pretty brutal. Like the career in totality matters more than the final season. And again, the final season wasn't all that impressive to me. 15th in yards per route run. And then what was it? 42.7% on just the go route. You take that out, you're left with what, 500 yards. Um, that's not a great profile for fantasy. Like for the NFL, sure. Could be one of these great EPA per play guy with crazy on off splits that benefit the team when he's on the field, but just for fantasy, that's not a great archetype.
Yeah, you're
And
assuming
like you
he's
said,
asked to do the exact same thing though at the NFL level.
what's that?
You're assuming he's asked to do exactly what he did in
Right,
the
yeah, maybe
NFL he did at
not, but
LSU.
then, there's a projection there, there's some uncertainty,
Well, you have
and
to project
the
every
bottom
player
line
though. There's
I mean, the
no
bottom line is we really haven't seen him do all that much. Maybe you're watching the film and, he's routing up cornerbacks and just on non-go routes and just not getting the ball,
well,
but
we saw that in the tape we watched yesterday.
right, right, but, to me, this is just not anything close to an analytics profile worthy of the current wide receiver 4.
Well,
If
that
you have
I
him
can't disagree with that. I mean, I definitely see the red flags there.
right, but if you have him wide receiver 4 film grade, I'm gonna feel a lot better about his ADP, but just purely analytics, it's not good to me.
Right on. So if you're picking, what is he, ADP 9, 10, 10 9?
At 109 super
109.
flex.
So if you're picking 109 super flex, you trying to trade out then? Or are you just going to take a different player altogether?
Well, the problem, Brett. So we've done about 8 episodes. We're
Yeah.
halfway through our ninth right now, and there are a lot of agreements. And there's going to be a lot more disagreements on this show because analytically, this is not a great wide receiver class. And based on the film, based on the NFL mock draft cognoscenti, this is an amazing wide receiver. This is like one of the best, deepest in I don't know how many years, but just analytically, it's not that good. So,
Yeah.
um,
I mean, you and I have talked privately about why I think that is and why I think that's here to stay. And
mhm.
maybe we'll have to adjust some models. We being you. Um,
I mean, I don't think anyone like incorporates the context and nuance that I do with this. Like, um, I definitely get it. The COVID year definitely changes
yep.
things. The NIL definitely changes things. But like,
Those are the
even
two.
trying to be as generous as I could, it's rough out here.
Also, transfer portal. So like you are going to
Yeah.
see every year now seniors coming back for the senior year because they're getting paid a lot of money to do so. You're going to see, a player that didn't get an opportunity somewhere go somewhere else and blow up, and then you're going to have a lot of these holes in the analytical profiles. And so um I'm
I'm incorporating that. I'm contextualizing that. It's still
yeah, I'm
rough
just
out
saying you
here
might
in
have
these
to
streets.
further
Yeah.
adjust it because you're going to routinely be left in situations where 7 of the top 10 guys don't have good analytical profiles based on history. History's changing though because the way we do things is now different.
We'll see. I mean, I
I
feel
mean,
like
this is the
we
third year
hear
in a row
that
you've
and then
told me
it's
the
not the
same thing,
case.
right?
But hmm?
This is the third year in a row I think you've told me the same thing. Analytical profiles
I
aren't
did
good.
I did say this last year, but I mean, like, I feel looking at the round 1, 2 wide receivers, like I still feel, like that was warranted. Quentin Johnston's looking like a colossal bust. Jordan Addison had a bunch of touchdowns, but I'm still not that confident he's as good as he was sold to be.
Tape on him was excellent last year.
Zay Flowers was just a screen merchant, busted coverage, deep threat merchant. Not much production beyond that.
Yeah. But
I
you
don't
look
know.
at
I don't know. So,
the second rounders though, Jaden Reed, Rashi Rice, Puka Nakua in the 5th round that I had a second round grade on.
right. I
I
have
mean,
well, Puka has a better analytics profile than like anyone in this class, maybe minus Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr.
right on.
You want
So
you want to talk career yards per route run? Like,
was he like 3 something?
yeah, I think
Yeah.
he's above. I think he's above all these guys. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we get out of here, I got a comp I want to throw at you. I already know this is not going to make you feel any better about
No.
Brian Thomas Jr. So, my comp for Thomas is DJ Chark. I went with the same school guy. I kind of forgot Chark actually played at LSU. When I watch Thomas, though, I see that and guys, DJ Chark has suffered a couple catastrophic major injuries. I'm talking DJ Chark when he was the freaking dude. Okay, DJ Chark was awesome. Ability to stack defenders, run that vertical route tree, the body control, the ability to toe tap on the sideline, lay out for the football. It was elite. All of it was elite. I see that in Brian Thomas. I think Chark was trending towards becoming a true number one receiver before the ankle exploded. Then he had the ACL and then the ankle again. It's been rough for DJ. Let's not think about DJ Chark we have today. Let's think about the one we had 4 years ago. Okay. I really like Brian Thomas in that role. And I think that's his starting point in the NFL. And I don't think Chark was as good of a prospect as Thomas, by the way. And I think that's evidenced in his, second round draft capital. But yada yada yada, whatever. I think DJ Chark's a great comp. I'm gonna go on a limb and say you don't like that one, Scott.
No, I do not. And this is what I mean, where it's like I'm a little worried that, like I said in a previous episode, it's like it's gonna be rare that like we like have a true like you're wrong, I'm right sort of thing. Like and like where I feel confident my biggest edge is going to be, it's not going to be like this prospect stinks and it's like no, I think this prospect's amazing or vice versa. It's really just like I'm predicting for fantasy points and maybe you're predicting for Pro Bowls or how valuable a guy is going to be to his NFL team. And like you bring up DJ Chark, who in his best season, his sophomore year, he ranked 25th in receiving yards. And then since then he's averaged like, I don't know, 400 yards per season. Another deep threat who doesn't bring all that much beyond that.
I'd say he's
And
more intermediate, to be honest with you. 10 to
okay.
19.
All right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that could be right. Um, and so yeah, just a guy who I'm worried about producing for fantasy compared to another guy who's never really produced for fantasy.
Injuries, Scott. Injuries.
All right. It could be. You could be right. Yeah.
All right, let us know who you think won Film versus Analytics. Sound off in the comments.